I've let you down. Is it too late to say sorry now? Hi, my name's Veronica, and this is basically a giant apology video. I hadn't made a wrap-up video since February. I'm just gonna tell you the books that I've read, maybe why I read them, maybe my general opinions about them, but mostly just the name of the book, the author, and the rating that I gave it. So here we go. So for the month of March, I started with the book The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I had read this book before. I read it once in 9th grade, and then I read it again last year, which was 11th grade. I read it from my AP Language and Composition class. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars both times. I absolutely adore this book. If you've not read it, please read it. The first time I read it, it was just for enjoyment, so you can do that. The next book I read in March is The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway, and I have been a Hemingway fanatic for 2 or 3 years now. I am obsessed with the man. I am fascinated by him, and I know so much about him, but I had never read anything by him. My grandma bought me this book, and so I figured I would start with this one. I didn't like it very much. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. His writing style is very unique, and it's not one that I particularly fell in love with. The next book I read was Insurgent by Veronica Roth. This is the second book in the Divergent trilogy, and when I read it, it was the second time I read it. I was going to read it before I went to see the movie, and then I reread it and never went to see the movie, because I actually like this book okay. I know most people don't. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it, and I knew the movie would probably ruin it for me, so I didn't end up seeing it. In the month of April, I did a few things that I've always said I would never do. The first book that I read was Allegiant by Veronica Roth, and I actually gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I always said I would never read it because I knew it happened at the end, but after I finished rereading Insurgent, I was like, just because I know 1 or 2 things that happen doesn't mean I know everything. You know, I liked Mockingjay, so maybe that's the thing. Maybe I'm just not as angry about weird final books as other people are. After I read Allegiant, I figured I would finish out the Divergent everything, and I read 4, a collection of short stories by Veronica Roth. I liked it okay. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The final book that I read in April was The Longest Ride by Nicholas Sparks. Also read this one with the intention of seeing the movie afterward, never saw the movie. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. May was a fabulous reading month for me. The first book that I read in May was Paper Towns by John Green. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. I read it with the intention of going to see the movie afterwards, and I did. And I also really liked the movie, Squash Your TBR or something about your TBR. And I did that, and I read 4 books in that week. And there actually is a wrap-up for that readathon, so I will link that in the description box. Then I participated in the Read Your Book Shelf-a-thon, and I put up my TBR for that but never posted a wrap-up, so I will wrap that up now, several months later. First book I read was Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It was fun. Next I read Please Ignore Vera Dietz by A.S. King, and the week before I read Ask the Passengers by A.S. King, and I loved it. And so I was like, more A.S. King. I already owned this. It was on my shelf. It was up next, so I was excited for it. Man, I hated it. I really did not like that book. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars, and that was me being very nice. The final book I read was The Program by Suzanne Young, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was great, very entertaining, and I thought it was an interesting look at what the world would look like if there was a suicide epidemic. In June, I spent a week at camp, and then I spent a week on a cruise, and so while I was at camp, I read To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, and I loved this. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was so much fun. I read 2 books on the cruise that I was on. The first one was Will Grayson by John Green and David Levithan. I gave the book 4 out of 5 stars. I preferred John's portions, John's Will Grayson chapters over David's Will Grayson chapters. And the final book I read in that month was The Geography of You and Me by Jennifer E. Smith, and I gave the book 3.3 out of 5 stars. In July, I decided to read the sequel to the program, which is The Treatment by Suzanne Young, and I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars, which was very nice of me. It definitely deserved 2 because it was not good. Throughout the summer, so really June and July, but I finished this in July, I read The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. This was my summer reading book for AP Literature and Composition. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think it was told in a really interesting way, and I really enjoyed Steinbeck's storytelling. In August, I read The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I had a hard time getting into it. It took me a while to get into it. But once I did, man, I was in love with it. It was so cute and enjoyable. Then I read I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zuzak, and I gave that book 5 out of 5 stars. It was really cool. The ending I disagree with. I don't like what he did with the very end. In September, I read a surprising amount of books. The first one I read was Metzingerstein by Edgar Allan Poe, and that book is like 6 pages long or something. It's very short. It's basically just a poem short story thing. And I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was weird. I never understood what he was trying to say. The next book I read was We Should Hang Out Sometime by Josh Sundquist. I think is how you say his last name. Josh is also a YouTuber. Check him out. He's very funny, very entertaining, and this book is exactly that. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Next I read The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Actually, I didn't read the whole Canterbury Tales, thank God. I read the prologue, The Clerk's Tale, and somebody else. Next, I read Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. The final book I read in September was In Real Life by Joey Graceffa, and I gave that book 4 out of 5 stars. And I will wrap up with October, which was last month. I did give a TBR for that month, and I totally failed. The first book I read was Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter by Seth Grahame-Smith. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I loved it, except for the fact that it started off with a narrator who introduced the story, and then it's Abe's story, and the narrator never comes back, and that made me upset. Next, I read The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner by Stephanie Meyer. This is a Twilight novella. It's book 3.5. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Day of Doom by David Baldacci, and I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. This is technically, I think, the 17th book in the 39 Clues series. And yes, they're this big. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller, but 17 books. I'm done. I am 110% done. This time through, it was the most immature read that I've had. Like, the others I've been able to enjoy it even though they're middle grade. This one sometimes I was like... After I read all of those, I started Horns by Joe Hill. I made it to page 142 when I decided, holy mother duck, this is the weirdest book I have ever read in my whole entire life. I'm not giving up on it, I'm just putting it to the side for now. I said this video would be short and it's not, but I had a lot of ground to cover, so I hope you enjoyed this. I will see you again in my next video. I love you all. Bye!